Unfortunately for Auburn, one of the things they have to talk about today is not next week's game or last week's game or anything between. It's the dismissal of another player. We'll make that the subject of item number 1 on our AT&T SEC Country Line 1st and 10 list. Kyle Davis, one-time 4-star receiver that Auburn went into the state of Georgia and pulled away from the Dogs and brought to Auburn. But the career for Davis never really materialized in Auburn uniform as he was dismissed from the team today. Gus Malzahn announcing in a press conference. In fact, here is what Malzahn told the media about Kyle Davis here really just a couple of hours ago.
I just want to let everybody know Kyle Davis has been dismissed from our team for breaking team rules. We wish him nothing but the best moving forward.
Now, for Auburn here, the storyline for me is not so much Davis's dismissal, although it's significant anytime you lose a big-time recruit, but it's how it fits into the other discussion of players who've left Auburn as of late. Byron Cowart leaving the program. You want to talk about Antoine Jackson leaving the program. You want to talk about quarterbacks here like Sean White. Go back to the offseason, other quarterbacks leaving this team.
John Franklin
III leaving this team. All of this seems to fit into a pattern of, wow, especially from this one recruiting class, from the class of 2016, this has really been a lot of attrition from one coach, one program. Is this a bad look for Gus Malzahn and all?
I don't want to say bad look, but there has been 14 players that have left or been dismissed from this program since the end of last season. And I think it starts to develop a little bit of a trend. I think that maybe recruits at some point do start to look at that in a negative light. I think this is the deepest position group. If you're going to have somebody leave, you feel good about it being at the wide receiver position at Auburn. You're talking about Ryan Davis, Will Hastings, Eli Stove, Nate Craig Myers, Darius Slayton. You go on down the list. So you feel good about where they're at specifically this season. But I think the trend of players departing the program specifically in the middle of the season and also players getting suspended, it's a little bit of a bad look for Gus Malzahn, I have to admit.
Yeah, one of the things this sets up for me is a scenario in which Malzahn, who I believe for the last few years, this is not just a Malzahn issue. This is true for really all Auburn coaches. Auburn's a volatile program. You're either winning at the highest level or you seem to be on the hot seat there. Malzahn, after another departure, more bad headlines here for an athletic program at Auburn that's already in a little bit of turmoil, you almost have to wonder if there's a loss on this schedule before the end of the season to a team other than Alabama. Maybe you can forgive an Alabama loss here if it means a 9-3 regular season for Auburn. But if it's anything other than that, given everything else that's kind of gone on with the program, somewhat disappointing year for Jarrett Stidham, a real weird, struggle at times between the Auburn offense, between Chip Lindsey and Gus Malzahn. You almost wonder, is this the kind of thing that's going to send that program into more turmoil, and there's going to be more and more questions being asked about Gus Malzahn at that point?
Yeah, I think you have to. When you look at the upcoming slate, you find the game against Arkansas. I'm going to circle that game against Texas A&M. I think that's a must-win if you're Gus Malzahn. You looked at it going into the season. Kevin Sumlin's one of those guys that were on a hot seat, really had a lot of questions about what was going on at Texas A&M. Now you start to circle that game. They got Arkansas coming up, but you circle Texas A&M. They're going to get Georgia. You're going to get Alabama at the end of the year. I'm not sure. I think when you look at the point spread this week for Arkansas, I think Auburn's a 13 or 14-point favorite. Yeah. Alabama last week, 31-point favorite. And so I think that shows you the disparity of the feelings nationally right now about the differences in the two programs. I think that Gus Malzahn has to reel that back in if he's going to feel really good going into the offseason and building towards signing day.
Don Plaisance in our comment section says Bama's little bro needs to learn to behave. And that does kind of pop up. I know that Christopher Walsh had a really interesting piece about that at SECCountry.com going back to last week in the academic issue that was at least reported and alleged by ESPN.com. And there is the element of, this just sort of feels like the kind of haphazard turmoil that Auburn's dealt with a lot in the past. I do think it's important, given all that, for Auburn and Gus Malzahn to keep winning. The Texas A&M game, like you point out,
yes.
Yeah, you can list a lot of other games in that schedule where Auburn's got to sort of solidify itself here a little bit. It can't be quite such to use a word I used a moment ago, it can't quite be such a haphazard program.
Yeah, and we don't know the details. We don't know the details about Sean White. Obviously, Cam Petway has had some ups and downs this year as well. And then you point to this situation. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it does seem like over the last few years there has been one of that downhill spiral in terms of some of these bigger recruits. And I can't say this enough. I feel like building towards signing day, that may be something in the back of some of these recruits' head is the attrition that you've seen at Auburn. Some of the biggest recruits they've had just haven't worked out and have had to go elsewhere. And so you mentioned it. When you start building towards the end of that season and you look at the schedule and the way things mount up, I think they have to beat everybody at least except Georgia and Alabama. And I think even then, if they don't knock off one of those, a lot of Auburn fans are not going to be happy the way this season played out, because it's like we mentioned, BA, going into the season, I don't know what Gus Malzahn has to fall back on if a losing trend develops this year. What are you going to say? I need my quarterback in the system?
That's a great point.
I'm not sure. What are you going to be building towards, or what are you telling the AD that you need if you're going to win? Because there's really not any holes in this chart.